Bonjour, merci de prendre place. On va commencer tout de suite les travaux de cette session relative au cadre international de la décarbonation. Un sujet très intéressant. Alors, avant de vous décliner nos chers panélistes de cette session-là, je voudrais donc vous annoncer qu'on aura à la suite de ce panel-là un petit échange. Alors là, très petit, donc avec la salle, pour répondre à vos questions. Ensuite, on procédera, avant de partir au déjeuner, à une signature de 3 conventions qui seront faites entre des organismes tunisiens et des organismes donc, étrangers qui sont parmi nous aujourd'hui sur la question de la décarbonation. Alors, cette session abordera le cadre international du changement climatique, de la transition énergétique et de la décarbonation. Elle présente aussi l'initiative internationale transfrontalière de la décarbonation. Le président de cette session, qui rehausse par sa présence donc, ce panel, n'est autre que M. Semir Abdelhafid, ministre de l'économie et de la planification du gouvernement tunisien, que je vous demande d'applaudir, s'il vous plaît. Merci. Bonjour, Monsieur le ministre. Merci d'être parmi nous. Sinon, pour meubler ce beau panel, nous avons le plaisir d'avoir avec nous Mme Rabia Seddewi, qui est la chef de la section énergie, cluster, changement climatique et durabilité des ressources naturelles à la Commission économique et sociale pour l'Asie occidentale, l'ESCOA. Bonjour et bienvenue parmi nous, Mme Seddewi. Nous avons également en ligne Mme Silvia CRESCIMBENI, qui est le point focal de la diplomatie climatique région MENA, directeur général du climat à l'Union européenne. Je suppose qu'elle est avec nous. La régie me dise donc si elle est connectée avec nous. On la salue également. Et puis je voudrais saluer aussi M. Andrea CAMPONOGARA, qui est chef des centres régionaux de collaboration de Secrétariat de la Convention Cadre des Nations Unies sur les changements climatiques. Il est juste à côté de moi. Bienvenue parmi nous. Welcome. Thank you for being with us today. Et puis également parmi nous, M. Miguel Rodrigo Gonzalo, qui est directeur du savoir des nouveaux modèles du business models et de la compétitivité à l'Institut para la Diversificación y Ahorro de la Energía d'Espagne. Avec lui, on va revenir sur le contexte espagnol, ce qui est en train d'être fait en Espagne. Et pour terminer, donc, ce panel, nous avons la présence de Dr Ethir Nuisser, qui est Programme Officer à l'Agence internationale pour les énergies renouvelables. Je vous indique également, je vous informe qu'il y a 2 vidéos enregistrées donc, qui nous ont été mandatées par 2 panélistes, en l'occurrence Mme Nigar ARPADERAI, qui est présidente de l'initiative Race to Zero d'Azerbaïdjan. Et puis également, donc, l'Union africaine est présente à travers une capsule de M. Rachid Ali Abdallah, qui est directeur exécutif de la Commission africaine de l'énergie à l'Union africaine. Voici pour ce qui est donc de ce beau monde qui va se produire par rapport à cette thématique. Et ma première question va à M. le ministre. Monsieur le ministre Semir Abdelhafid, ministre de l'économie et de la planification. Quels sont les engagements de la Tunisie en la matière donc, de décarbonation et pourquoi c'est si important pour la Tunisie actuellement de s'inscrire dans cette mouvance mondiale? Parole.
Merci beaucoup, CNIS. Bienvenue à tous les présents. Bienvenue aussi aux panélistes. Avant de répondre à votre question, je ne serai pas trop précis là-dessus, puisqu'il y aura d'autres collègues qui donneront beaucoup plus de détails, le ministre de l'Environnement en particulier par rapport à ses engagements, mais je commencerai tout d'abord par dire que le constat, c'est le changement climatique. Face à ce constat de changement climatique, il y avait l'analyse des causes. Et la cause principale, c'est les émissions des gaz à effet de serre. Et pour résoudre cette situation, il faudrait trouver un mécanisme. Et ce mécanisme, c'est la décarbonation. Et la décarbonation qui fait en fait référence à des mesures mises en œuvre pour alléger l'empreinte carbone en délaissant les énergies fossiles au profit des sources moins émissives des gaz à effet de serre. Mais aussi, et c'est ce que nous faisons cette dernière période, plus particulièrement en Tunisie, mais aussi grâce à l'efficacité énergétique, et je reviendrai par la suite, et en faisant preuve davantage de sobriété, notamment en s'interrogeant sur nos besoins. Sauf que l'environnement, c'est un bien mondial. Et donc, il faudrait qu'il y ait plutôt une coopération internationale pour atteindre l'objectif. Et c'est ce qui fait qu'il y a un cadre international. Et je pense que cette session, elle s'intéresse à ce cadre international. Et je prendrai peut-être l'essentiel de mon intervention pour rappeler l'évolution de ce cadre international en précisant de temps en temps la participation de la Tunisie. Et la première coordination à l'échelle internationale, ça a été fait dans le cadre de la première conférence mondiale sur le climat en 1979 et qui a vu la création du groupe d'experts intergouvernemental sur l'évolution du climat, plus connu par le GIEC. Ensuite, il y avait le protocole de Montréal sur la protection de la couche d'ozone en 1987. Et ça a été un protocole qui donnait suite à la Convention de Vienne sur la protection de la couche d'ozone. Et c'est un protocole que la Tunisie a ratifié en 1989. Ensuite, en 1992, il y avait le sommet de Rio, au Brésil, et c'est dans le cadre de ce sommet qu'il y a eu naissance de la Convention Cadre des Nations Unies. Et c'est ce sommet-là qui va par la suite donner naissance à ce qu'on appelle les conférences des parties, les COP, qui vont être organisées pratiquement à partir de 1995 à un rythme annuel en dehors de 2020, année du Covid. Et la Tunisie a ratifié la Convention cadre des Nations Unies le 15 juillet 1993. 2 années plus tard, en 1997, il y avait le protocole de Kyoto, et qui consistait en fait le premier accord international contraignant, et que la Tunisie a ratifié en juin 2002. Ensuite, une déception avec la COP 2015, qui a eu lieu à Copenhague, puisque au cours de cette conférence, et contrairement aux attentes, la communauté internationale n'était pas arrivée à adopter un nouvel accord obligatoire. Chose qui va être résolue quelques années plus tard, puisque c'est dans le cadre de la COP 21 de 2015 à Paris qu'il y a eu l'adoption de l'accord de Paris, dans le cadre de cet accord, qui était un accord mondial, contraignant, et que la Tunisie avait signé. Ensuite, avec la COP 2021, qui avait pour objectif la mise en œuvre des objectifs sur lesquels les pays s'étaient engagés dans le cadre du COP 21. Et dans le cadre de ce COP, de cette conférence, la Tunisie aussi avait participé, elle avait pris des engagements en ce qui concerne la protection de l'environnement. Je passerai directement à la COP28 et je vous comprendrai pourquoi, parce que la COP28, qui est la plus récente, 2023, qui a eu lieu à Dubaï, dans le cadre de cette conférence, l'objectif annoncé, ça a été de tripler les capacités des énergies renouvelables dans le monde à l'horizon de 2030. Et sur ce plan, la Tunisie a un fort engagement, puisque on cible pour 2030 un objectif de 35% des énergies renouvelables, sachant qu'aujourd'hui, on est à un taux de l'ordre de 5,3%. Pour vous dire que l'objectif annoncé et qu'on atteindra, Inch'Allah, et ce n'est pas si El Chouchen, secrétaire d'État aux énergies renouvelables, qui va dire non. Donc, Inch'Allah, on va l'atteindre, cet objectif de 35% pour 2023, qui est beaucoup plus que l'objectif de tripler annoncé dans le cadre de la conférence de 28 de 2023. Donc pour nous, le passage de 5,3% à 35% impliquerait presque 7 fois. 7 fois ce que l'on est en train de réaliser aujourd'hui. C'est un objectif sur lequel le gouvernement est en train de travailler. C'est un objectif qui a vu une forte accélération au cours de cette année. Et c'est un objectif que l'on va, Inch'Allah, atteindre, notamment dans le cadre de notre coopération avec nos partenaires internationaux qui sont également engagés avec nous et auprès desquels, bien sûr, on demandera beaucoup plus d'implication afin de rendre cet objectif très, très ambitieux possible. Voilà, merci.
Je remercie Monsieur le ministre. Alors, je rappelle que vous avez demandé de nous quitter à 13h. C'est bien ça, Monsieur le ministre, parce que vous avez des engagements gouvernementaux qui vous attendent. Et donc, je vous demande, s'il vous plaît, d'applaudir chaleureusement Monsieur le ministre, M. Samir Abdelrahid, ministre de l'économie et de la planification, qui a aiguillé un peu le débat par rapport aux engagements de la Tunisie et cette mouvance très très importante sur laquelle nous sommes impliqués pour décarboner notre économie et pour essayer de devenir un hub également en la matière. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le ministre. Alors, je profiterai de ce que vient de dire Monsieur le ministre sur la COP 28, Monsieur Andrea CAMPONOGARA. Vous êtes chef des centres régionaux de collaboration de Secrétariat de la Convention Cadre des Nations Unies sur les changements climatiques, pour vous demander quels sont les principaux résultats du premier bilan mondial organisé lors de la COP 28, en ce qui concerne la transition énergétique et la décarbonation.
Thank you very much. Let me first thank the organizer and yourself for inviting me here and giving me the possibility to represent the Climate Change Secretariat. The Global Stocktake in Dubai, maybe a few words on the Global Stocktake for those in the audience that are not really familiar with the process under the Paris Agreement. So the Global Stocktake is a pillar of the negotiation process under the Paris Agreement, is a key exercise that parties conduct every 5 years to take stock of the progress in achieving the goal 1.5 degrees goal of the Paris Agreement. So in understanding where they are with the various initiatives in the various areas of work, mitigation, adaptation, climate finance, technology development, transfer, gender mainstreaming, and so on and so forth. Out of the discussion of the global stocktake, a decision is taken by parties that provide mandates to countries that provide guidance on how to progress further in accelerating climate action, in accelerating the emission reduction and strengthening resilience to the adverse effect of the climate change. So what happened in Dubai? In Dubai, parties at COP28 concluded the first global stocktake. It was a very long, debated, negotiated session, and particularly on energy, particularly on issues related to the decarbonization pathway. and they eventually agreed on a set of, a list of efforts that the parties are called on to support in the years to come. I would like to read directly from the text of a decision, because decision texts are often a masterpiece of diplomacy in terms of language, and it will give also a sense of a requirement came out of a global stock take. So, and the decision recognized the need to accelerate efforts in reducing emission reduction, in keeping in line with the 1.5 degrees pathway, call on parties to contribute to the following global efforts: tripling renewable energy capacity globally and doubling the global average annual rate of energy efficiency improvement by 2030. Accelerating efforts towards the phase down of unabated coal power. Accelerating efforts globally toward net zero emission energy system, utilizing zero and low carbon fuels well before or by around mid-century, so by 2050. Transitioning away from fossil fuel in energy system in a just, orderly, and equitable manner. And this was one of the items that was discussed at length, the transition from fossil fuel. It was initiated in Glasgow, but so they eventually parties agreed, and this is an important achievement, to reflect that in a decision. Accelerating zero and low emission technologies, including renewables, nuclear, abatement and removal technologies, such as carbon capture and utilization, or carbon capture and storage, particularly in hard-to-abate sectors, and low-carbon hydrogen production. So we're giving also some guidance on the technology and the sector to intervene. Accelerating and substantially reducing non-carbon dioxide emission globally, including in particular methane emission by 2030. There is a point on transport, accelerating the reduction of emission from road transport. And the last one is phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies that do not address energy poverty or just transition as soon as possible. So one may argue that the language is pretty soft, that there is no legally binding requirement. The decision calls on parties, doesn't invite, doesn't request, doesn't stress, doesn't urge. Still, that's, I think, is an important achievement that was came out of a party negotiation. Next step is, particularly for the international organization, including the Climate Change Secretariat, to start tracking efforts that the countries, the party will put in place, technology-wise, financially, the pledges, the financial pledges that will come. So the next challenge is to track and then to report back in the next round of the global stock take that will happen in 5 years from now.
Let me go to the second questions. I'm going to switch from English to French. So, concerning the second question, concerning to the communication of the countries to the Secretariat of Climate, what is the landscape today about what countries are making to decarbonize?
The parties are required not required, but invited to make any efforts to submit to the Paris Agreement, the Secretariat actually, what they call long-term low emission development strategy. So what goes by the acronym of LTLEDs, which are sort of a roadmap that indicate how a country would like to transition from the current economic model growth to a low emission one. We have, out of 195 parties of the Paris Agreement, we have received as a Secretariat so far 73 LTLEDs, but yet representing a very important group of parties because they represent 76% of the global emission, like 87% of the GDP, 68% of the whole population and 77% of the total energy consumption. So the information that came out of these documents are pretty significantly indicative, statistically, I would say. So the first element that emerged is that the transition to a low-emission economy is not just a climate change issue. So they stress linkages with social and economic development as well. So in almost the totality of the LTLEDs, there is reference to job creation. So the fact that the transition should not penalize the current situation, social situation, but should also offer the possibility to increase the employment and to offer new type of jobs. And training and education is also an element which is emphasized, the need for a process that is inclusive, so engage in the planning all levels of the society, private sectors, the civil society, NGOs, the youth, the children, the women.
I will maybe conclude with the last question, if you don't mind. Yeah, because the time is running, and to give the mic
Sure.
to other panelists also. So please, the third questions, I'm going to tell it in French. Quelles initiatives sont lancées dans le cadre de l'accord de Paris pour faciliter le dialogue et le partage d'expériences sur la transition énergétique?
In Glasgow at COP27, the parties launch what we usually call the mitigation work program, which is a work program to scale up, accelerate ambition and implementation in terms of reduction of emissions. It's a platform for parties to convene and share experience, identify challenges, needs, and discuss on specific issues related to energy, decarbonization. It's simply put as the organization of 2 dialogues a year on every year, including an investment forum. So it's a discussion on energy, which is strictly linked also on climate finance aspect. And the first 2 dialogue was organized in 2023 on specific energy supply, energy issues. And the next one, which, I mean, renewable energy, grid and energy storage, carbon capture and storage, energy efficiency, energy transmission, and energy in transport as well, and also cross-cutting issues which are relevant to finance, to technology and capacity building, and to sustainable development. So the outcome of this discussion inform the Paris Agreement, so the parties, the CMA, so the convention, to take, of course, informed decision and provide the proper guidance to the country,
Thank
to the party.
you.
The second round is in 2024, and it will look at cities. So building efficiency and efficient urban system and modeling. One dialogue took place already at the June session in Bonn, and the next one will take place in COP29 in Baku.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you. You asked to leave us because you have a meeting in your hotel, so the time to go to your hotel. That's true? Yes? Yeah, you still have 5 minutes. Okay, we can applaud. On peut applaudir, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur Andrea CAMPONOGARA, donc, qui est chef des centres régionaux de collaboration du Secrétariat de la Convention Cadre des Nations Unies sur les changements climatiques. Alors, on parle institutionnel, on parle pays, mais le secteur privé est également très intéressé par ces considérations-là, et les changements de décarbonation le concernent bien évidemment au même titre que tous les autres pays. Les pays, c'est peut-être des réflexions macro, mais sur le micro, c'est essentiellement le secteur privé qui va aider à la décarbonation. Et à ce titre, nous avons prévu l'intervention en ligne de Mme Nigar ARPADERAI, qui est présidente de l'initiative Race to Zero, qui nous a fait le plaisir de nous rejoindre via cette capsule que vous allez regarder. J'insiste sur le fait que c'est une capsule qui est enregistrée. Merci. Vidéo, s'il vous plaît.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to join you at the first Decarbonation Summit. As the high-level champion for COP29, my role is to build stronger collaboration between governments and non-state actors, including businesses, investors, cities, local communities. It's an honor to address Tunisian leaders today, united in advancing the climate agenda. The private sector is crucial in driving climate solutions, not only through decarbonization, but also by addressing biodiversity, sustainable agriculture, and pollution. Africa, despite contributing less than 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions, is disproportionately impacted by climate change, losing up to 5% of its GDP annually. The continent needs significant investment to meet its sustainable development goals, and the private sector can play a key role in this. The cost of action on climate change may be high, but the cost of inaction will be far greater. Africa has a unique opportunity to both limit emissions and create millions of jobs, especially in the renewable energy sector, where it holds over 40% of the world's best resources. Nature-based solutions like reforestation and mangrove protection can further help remove CO2 and restore landscape. Tunisia is taking important steps toward addressing climate change with its 2023-2025 development plan, emphasizing the need for an economic shift. Despite its low contribution to global emissions, Tunisia has raised its climate ambition with an updated indices aiming for significant reductions in greenhouse gases by 2030. Globally, the Race to Zero campaign is rallying businesses, cities and regions to commit to net zero emissions by 2050. We are proud to welcome African accelerators like the Kenya Climate Innovation Center and SUCC Africa, who bring regions' leadership to this effort. As Africa balances development with climate action, we must spotlight its opportunities for green growth, especially in renewable energy. I am pleased to announce a new partnership between Tunisia's National Agency for Energy Management and the Race to Zero to advance innovative energy solutions and reduce emissions. I also applaud the UN Global Compact Tunisia for their leadership in driving sustainable business practices. Africa's natural landscapes, from forests to peatlands, play a crucial role in showing climate change. It's vital that we contribute to foster collaboration across all sectors, and I am encouraged by the presence of private companies at today's summit. Thank you, and I wish you a successful gathering.
Voilà, c'était Mme Nigar ARPADERAI, qui est présidente de l'initiative Race to Zero. Elle a parlé aussi de la convention qui va être signée tout à l'heure entre l'ANME et puis Race to Zero. Il y a un représentant, une représentante de Race to Zero qui est avec nous et tout à l'heure vous allez assister donc à cette signature de convention. Alors je me tourne à présent à Mme Rabia Sedewi, vous êtes chef de la section énergie, cluster changement climatique et durabilité des ressources naturelles à la Commission économique et sociale pour l'Asie occidentale, l'ESCOA. Et pour vous poser la première question, quels sont les principaux défis liés au climat auxquels est confrontée la région arabe?
Sabah al-Khair and bonjour, and thank you for inviting me to take part of this session. And allow me that I'll be speaking in English, I'll be more comfortable on that. Actually, I think the opening session, the welcoming remarks, and also the first session very well highlighted the context, specifically on Tunisian, because it's also reflecting on the challenge of the MENA region. And my colleague Andrea already gave the insights on the global processes. But always when you speak about decarbonization, although it's an opportunity, certainly, but allow me, Jan, to bring it from the challenges perspective, as just to respond to your question. Among the challenges, maybe some of them were already highlighted, but maybe just put them in a context. If we take the MENA region, and most of the MENA region countries are already in the Mediterranean, the climate change is already a challenge. It's a challenge because we are impacted by climate change since the temperature in the region is the highest compared to the global average. And we can see it in all our countries. In addition to that we have desertification, land degradation, and the lack of also access to water. When you take the 14 countries globally, are all of them in the Arab region. And starting Tunisia is also included, and all the countries Arab countries in the Mediterranean region. This is from the climate perspective, but when you take it also how to link the decarbonization pathway, there are also aspects on the social and economic and technology aspect. And the social aspect, and certainly we believe that the climate change is certainly among the agenda at the political level. There is a huge willingness and commitment from all I would say, the policymakers in the region, but you have certain challenges. On the social aspect, you need to ensure that decarbonization will not leave anyone behind. Leaving no one behind when you have a region where most of it are young, between 60 and 70% are youth. You have high level of unemployment. You have an issue of high level of dependence on fossil fuels, be it on the source of energy or also in terms of the demand, including the host of this forum. And so you speak about 60 and 80%, even 90% of the energy mix in the region, including if I move forward in the GCC, all of it are dependent on fossil fuels. And number three, which is extremely important on the economic aspect, is the lack of economic diversification. Be it oil and gas producers and consumers alike, all of us, we have an issue in terms of economic diversification, even those who do not have an oil and gas resources, because our industry are very basic in terms of helping us to lead in the decarbonization pathway. And there are different reasons of that. Most of it, I would like first to also add to the lack and the increase in inequality that we have in the region. This is extremely important, and ESCWA did release several reports that shows that the level of poverty is increasing, including in the rich countries. Now I just want to add on the two important pillars, which are the finance aspect. I think the opening remark did highlight that, but from a regional perspective, we attract the lowest globally. It's even less than 5%. And this 5%, four times of it goes to the mitigation, not the adaptation. And I think the COP, as my colleague did highlight it, actually Egypt and the United Arab Emirates did very much help to really boost the agenda and try to put the adaptation, but also to put the climate finance on the top of the agenda. So we come, but it doesn't mean that we see the finance coming and flowing in the region. The other aspect, if I may, since we spoke about the economic, is climate mainstreaming. If you really want to lead the decarbonization pathway, then I was happy that ANMO was able to mobilize different ministries. You cannot speak about decarbonization pathway and a target on renewable energy and efficiency if you don't have a climate mainstreaming in your economic planning, and more importantly, in budgeting. And when you are able to quantify and have a nationally determined contribution which are investable, and then you can have bankable projects, and then you can basically have access to finance. These are some of the elements that I want to highlight at the outset. Thank you.
Alors, certains pays, on se pose des questions sur certains pays, notamment les pays qui sont dépendants des considérations fossiles. Je parle du Moyen-Orient aujourd'hui principalement, parce que l'ESCWA couvre également le Moyen-Orient. Et pour ces pays qui sont riches ou dépendants des combustibles fossiles, comment sont-ils en train de se préparer ou de préparer leur économie? Donc, à quoi ressemble leur transition?
Thank you. Actually, if I may, in the Mediterranean region, we also have Algeria and Libya, and they are in similar context. And having an oil and gas producing countries, actually, if I take those who are leading, just to give an information for when you speak about the Sustainable Development Goal 7 related to energy, although the globe is not on track in achieving SDG 7, even less our region, specifically in renewable energy and even more energy efficiency. I'm glad that Tunisia and Jordan are the best and ranked as the highest in terms of improvement in energy efficiency. But returning back to your question, actually countries in the GCC specifically are leading in terms of the energy transition. Not just about speaking national visions or that announcement in net zero emission. These are just from a vision perspective. But in practice, the lowest cost in renewable energy is in the GCC. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as you speak about 10 cents, I mean, the lowest you can get globally. In addition to that, the largest hydrogen projects, you see them also in the GCC, concretely under construction in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. United Arab Emirates and also others, but I would say just United Arab Emirates and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, followed by Oman, who are really trying to make progress. But how they are making that, we see that the national vision become more as endorsed by all the ministries in a way. You speak not about decarbonization. Decarbonization is part of the equation. It's about sustainable development and economic development, and how to build through your own gas resources in a way that we believe that through reducing the carbon emission by renewable energy, energy efficiency, looking to other alternatives like hydrogen, nuclear power, and others, and then ensure that the circular economy, specifically the circular carbon economy, by trying to make best use of these resources. On the circular economy, trying to also, whatever we build, we try to create jobs, create small and medium enterprises, give more room for the startups within the region, and even in the GCC. And then we believe that carbon management technology is a must, and the IPCC report already highlighted that. So you see also the largest project in terms of CCUS are in the GCC. And this is sometimes people don't speak about that, but when we take the figures, we should recognize that globally they are leading the agenda. But they don't put it on the decarbonization. It's more looking how to ensure a just inclusive energy transition, and decarbonization is an opportunity for them. And just to include that specifically, if you see the figures in all the studies, although maybe the European market would not be taker of the hydrogen, for example, depending on the color, but we should recognize they will be leading also in the energy in the future.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, ma dernière question pour vous, Mme Sidewi. On parle beaucoup d'inclusion, on parle beaucoup de justesse, on parle beaucoup d'équité, on parle beaucoup d'égalité aussi. Alors, comment les voies mondiales de décarbonation pourraient garantir qu'elles soient effectivement justes et inclusives?
I think no better than the UN system, which have the opportunity that we have in the UN system. And this is what I learned as I came from the oil and gas sector back in the previous years, that I learned from the UN system to give really a platform to ensure that no one is left behind. And this is what I learned from the system. Actually, we always advocate to ensure that whatever energy transition and visions are designed and implemented, we need to ensure that no one is left behind. It's just an inclusive. How this should be done, it's really a challenge for everybody globally. But I want just to highlight something extremely important. We put into consideration that the youth engagement, the gender, we need to ensure rural-urban divide. I mean, I've implemented project in Tunisia. I learned more about the rural context and how the challenges the women face there. So, and the other aspect is in terms of not leaving no one behind, is that it is an opportunity decarbonization pathway, provided that we all are on track, that if we have access to finance and technology and the right capacity building. That's why we are hosting the NDC forum in order to help countries to really present better NDCs, make them invisible. But just to indicate that just leaving no one behind, it's not just an issue of us or those who are not developed countries, also oil and gas producing countries. In the GCC, they could be left behind because the energy system is vulnerable. And energy vulnerability is also, if we don't really pick the window that we have, will be left behind compared to the global average. But I just want also to add something to the equation, because it's an opportunity to Tunisia and the region, is the mineral sector. We work at the UN system on the extractive, and specifically we focus on minerals, because countries in the region do have the potential of minerals that will lead the energy transition. And any target we put globally, be it renewable energy, electrification, hydrogen, all of that is not achievable, not possible, if we don't address vulnerability, don't address the rights of those who have the minerals, and to change the business model. And really that, since we are in the Mediterranean, some of which are Europeans and others in the Arab region, is really to change the business model on a win-win situation that basically it's not just selling the technology, it's to ensure that the economic development is within our countries, where we can develop our economy and ensure that we create jobs and we keep our brains and the youth within our nations. Thank you.
Je demande s'il vous plaît d'applaudir Mme Silvia CRESCIMBENI, chef de la section énergie, cluster changement climatique et durabilité des ressources naturelles à la Commission économique et sociale pour l'Asie occidentale, pour cette brillante intervention franche et profonde, on va dire aussi. Alors, on va partir à Bruxelles. Je vous emmène à Bruxelles, donc en Belgique, retrouver Mme Silvia CRESCIMBENI, qui est point focal de la diplomatie climatique région MENA. Elle est également directrice générale climat à l'Union européenne. Mme CRESCIMBENI, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Can you hear me? Thank you for joining us. You can't hear me? Would you display, would you enable your mic, please? No? You can't hear me. La régie?
Well, I don't know if anybody hears, but here no video, no audio.
Can you hear me?
We can say this, we can't hear you.
I'm trying to contact the organizers on WhatsApp to inform them. Yeah.
Thank you, Naira.
Silvia, do you hear me? Silvia? Est-ce qu'on peut se reconnecter? Donc, je vais passer à la vidéo de M. Rachid Abdallah, donc de l'Union africaine, le directeur exécutif de la Commission africaine de l'énergie, en attendant peut-être donc de se reconnecter avec Mme CRESCIMBENI. La vidéo de M. Rachid Ali Abdallah pour parler des efforts de décarbonation que les pays africains sont en train de réaliser.
Your Excellency, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. On behalf of myself and African Energy Commission Africa, I greet you all. I am glad to join you virtually today in this inaugural event on decarbonization in Mediterranean regions. First, I would like to thank and congratulate National Agency for Energy Management, the Tunisian Union for Industry, Commerce and Handcrafts, the United Nations Development Programme, the European Union, and all partners for supporting organizing of this event. The event presents an opportunity to take stock of the decarbonization ecosystem in the region and chart common strategy towards low carbon future. The decarbonization discussion you are holding today come in the backdrop of continued devastating effect of the climate change in the continent and the globe. From drought to the floods, from cyclones to unpredicted weather patterns, with loss of life and properties, and enormous physical cost to the continent. These extreme events that are attributed to the climate change cost the global economy more than 140 billion US dollars per year. The engagement should also be recognized of African energy infrastructure constraints that include both supply deficits and constraints as well as quality challenges. Currently, more than 500 million and more than 1 billion people in the continent are still without access to electricity and clean cooking respectively. For Africa, a low carbon and climate resilient path provide a win-win situation in simultaneously addressing its development and climate change challenge. With the continent holding more than 30% of all global critical transition mineral reserve and more than 2,000 gigawatts of unexploited renewable energy potential, the transition is an opportunity to enhance energy access, support industrialization, and creating jobs for young populations. Ladies and gentlemen, as a specialized agency of African Union, AFRIC, through the African Energy Transition Program, is supporting African countries in building their low carbon future. With the support from African Development Bank, AFRIC is currently developing African energy transition strategy and guideline for the continent. In addition, to support individual member states in developing their deep decarbonization path. The strategy is in line with the African Common Position of energy access and just energy transition, which emphasizes on importance to achieve universal energy access paired with sustainable and low carbon development and harnessing abundant renewable energy and non-renewable energy source to meet the Africa ever-growing energy demand. The strategy is strengthening Africa's key pillars in the energy sector that include financing, technology and skills, policy and regulation framework, and fostering regional integration. Further, it is complement other ongoing initiatives by African Union, some of which I highlighted. One, to address the energy infrastructure needs. The African Union launched the African Energy Single Exchange Market, AFSEM, which, together with the African Continental Free Trade, SFTA, provide a harmonized framework for facilitating energy trade among African countries. The Continental Master Plan, CMP, for electricity sectors identifies priority generation and transmission projects that will support integration of more clean energy sources in the continent. Further, we are working to enhance the development of regional market for natural gas as a transition fuel. Two, under the Energy Efficiency Strategy, AFIS, and as part of the African Union member state commitment to the global goal of doubling the annual energy efficiency between now and 2030, Africa is promoting energy efficiency in transport, industry, agriculture, electricity supply system, among others. The AFIS articulates several actions, some of which are under the implementation. Our mission is to achieve 50% increase in our energy productivity by 2050 and 70% by 2063. 3. Africa is still lagging in terms of access to the clean cooking, with the biomass mainly charcoal and firewood for cooking, accounting for more than 51% of the total primary energy supply. To address this challenge, we are currently designing an Africa Clean Cooking Program to support mobilizing funds for clean cooking initiative in the continent, in addition to provide high-level awareness, research, and capacity building. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I would like to propose the following intervention in our global concentrated effort for decarbonization. One, there is the need for equitable access to the electricity and clean cooking, which will ensure that all communities, including marginalized and low-income population, have access to the affordable and clean energy sources. This calls for global policies and programs that prioritize energy access for underserved or underserved communities. Two, there is a need for enhancing financing and financial inclusion, which will ensure that finance mechanisms for renewable energy projects are accessible to a diverse range of stakeholders, including small businesses, cooperatives, and community-owned energy initiatives. 3, we need to adopt progressive policies and regulatory framework that promote a just energy transition, such as realistic renewable energy target, support carbon pricing mechanism, set energy efficiency standard, and provide all forms of incentive for clean energy investment, especially in the developing country. 4, we must foster community engagement and participation in decision-making processes related to the energy decarbonization project for acceptance. Community voice must be considered in planning, development, and implementation of the energy project, including decarbonization initiatives that may impact their life. The African Union Commission will continue to support and promote initiatives that aim to tackle issues facing global in general and Africa in particular in programmatic manners. I invite all of us to consider Africa as an investment destination based on opportunities that exist as part of the energy transition. By this, I would like to thank you all and I wish you fruitful engagement. Thank you very much.
C'était M. Rachid Ali Abdallah, qui est directeur exécutif de la Commission africaine de l'énergie auprès de l'Union africaine. Il a parlé effectivement sur les défis que rencontrent donc les pays africains en matière de décarbonation. Et on va partir encore une fois donc à Bruxelles retrouver Mme Silvia CRESCIMBENI, qui est le point focal de la diplomatie climatique région MENA, directrice générale du climat auprès de l'Union européenne. Silvia, can you hear me?
Yes, inshallah.
Bienvenue parmi nous, nice to meet you. مرحبا، كيف الحال؟
مرحبا بكم، ازيكم؟
Alhamdulillah. Ma première question, alors pour vous, j'en ai deux. En fait, il faut juste rappeler qu'en 2026, donc, le mécanisme d'ajustement carbone aux frontières entrera effectivement en vigueur, et ça c'est un défi très très important donc, pour tous les pays qui sont exportateurs auprès de l'Union européenne, notamment la Tunisie. Mais peut-être on ne va pas parler de ce sujet-là, mais juste pour le rappeler que la date arrive à grands pas. Ma première question pour vous, Madame Silvia, quels seront les principaux objectifs de l'Union européenne lors de la COP 2029?
Well, thank you very much and good afternoon, colleagues. Apologies for the technical glitch before. So from our side as European Union, we have the main principles that are guiding us in our climate diplomacy is ambition, implementation and inclusiveness. Ambition, we need to keep it high, keep ambition high to make sure that we stay on course of what was agreed at the Paris Agreement a few years ago, and His Excellency the Minister gave a very precise overview of the parcours, the path that led us to these commitments, and also the difficulties in achieving multilateral agreements on that. But we need to keep this ambition high, and we need also to maintain to ensure the implementation. That implementation of the pledges is on track. And here I would like to go back to an important point that Andrea mentioned earlier, the reference to the long-term development strategies, the LT-LEDs. This is an important pillar of work at multilateral level, but also part of our climate diplomacy, because we have many pledges around the globe, especially net zero pledges, that have to be backed with credible, serious, and solid long-term strategies. And this, for us, is one of the key priorities, to make sure that we are really doing what we have committed to do. Last point is inclusiveness, and this is an element that was raised in intervention by Raja earlier. The transition and the climate agenda needs to go hand in hand with social inclusion. This transition needs to be just. But now let me go back to what we expect in terms of objectives at COP29. What we reached with the UAE consensus was a crucial step forward in the implementation of the Paris Agreement. We finally kept the 1.5 degree on track, at least again in terms of policy commitments. one important information that we get from the press today is that according to the IEA, there are estimates that project that the objective of tripling the renewable energy by 2030 seem to be feasible. And this is also an important milestone, an important message that is quite encouraging. What we have in front of us for COP29 is reaching an agreement on global climate finance. Ministers and leaders must reaffirm their commitment to the transition away from fossil fuels. This was quite a difficult point to agree upon at COP28, as also mentioned Andrea earlier, and demonstrate that they are taking active steps to do so. Again, the point on implementation. Ministers and leaders must agree on a new and ambitious, achievable goal, global goal for climate finance, that brings back confidence that the public and private resources are there to support the transition, and launch an international carbon market in line with the Paris Agreement, with the rules that deliver environmental integrity, transparency, and accountability. Now, the EU and the member states, and its member states are the world's leading contributor in climate finance and development assistance. They provided at least around 1/3 of the world's public climate finance. This is a good result, but it's definitely not enough, and we're determined to maintain our leadership in the coming future on climate finance. But we also know, we're well aware that public climate finance is far from being enough to achieve the ambitiousness of the transition that we have in front of us. We will need to have private investments, we will need to leverage private sector resources in the transition agenda, and this is also an important part of the discussion around the new collective quantified goal that will have to be agreed by COP29. For us,
oui. Alors justement, excusez-moi de vous interrompre, mais je voudrais dans la foulée aller vers la deuxième question parce que le temps nous devance également. Et justement, par rapport à cette COP29, vous venez de l'évoquer, qu'en est-il des mises à jour donc, sur les avancées récentes des politiques européennes en matière de transition verte? Vous avez sûrement une veille qui vous permette donc de dire où en sont réellement les choses. Est-ce que les politiques que vous êtes en train de suivre sont des politiques qui sont sur les rails ou ne sont pas sur les rails? Et puis surtout, quels sont les axes prioritaires de la coopération de l'Union européenne pour la transition verte dans les pays du sud de la Méditerranée, puisque nous sommes dans un événement qui concerne donc la décarbonation dans la région méditerranéenne?
So thanks, Anis. Look, the EU, as you know, has always been at the forefront of global climate action. Our principle is leading by example, and we were the first continent in the world committing to legally binding net zero emissions by 2050. So it's not just a pledge, it is a legal commitment that we have enshrined in the European climate law that was adopted last year. Now we are determined and committed to stay the course of our transition to climate neutrality. We have put in motion all our legislative and regulatory processes to adopt all the files that were foreseen under the European Green Deal. And this has already, with the first round of implementation, has already demonstrated that we've managed to increase our emissions reduction foreseen by 2030. Our target now for 2030 is 55% emissions reduction, and we are already working on a new target for 2040 that will be approximately around 90%. That will keep us on track to meet the net zero by 2050 as we have in our climate law. And for example, we have already achieved a reduction of 32.5% of emissions in 2022 compared to 1990s level. So the priority for the months to come, you've also probably followed the political changes in Europe. It will be implementing the big set of policies and legislations that we have put in motion with the European Green Deal, and work on this new climate target for 2040 that will represent our new submission to the UNFCCC as a nationally determined contribution for the whole block of the EU. Another important part, I think also linked to finance, is the redirection of most of our financing, both domestic and external, so in our cooperation with our partners, to green transition and climate action. We have between 30 and 40% of expenditures in all our budget, again, both inside the EU and outside, dedicated to climate and green transition. And I think this is quite important because it gives also not just the policy signal, but also the investment signal that we are moving forward with the transition and we are serious on that. Now, moving to our cooperation with the Mediterranean.
Would you conclude, please? I don't have time, just in 1 minute, please.
The cooperation with the Mediterranean will be, in the coming years, more and more oriented to grasping together the opportunities that the green transition offers on both shores. The idea is building sustainable shared prosperity, and this will be done all along the areas of energy transition, investments in adaptation, investments in resilience, because it's not only about reducing emissions, but it's also building the resilience capacities of Mediterranean countries, being among the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. We have several instruments, the Global Gateway, the investment plan for the Mediterranean, and we will bring together the Team Europe approach together with European financial institutions to leverage all this potential that the green transition offers, therefore investing on green value, Euro-Mediterranean green value chains, promoting, again, a shared vision of sustainable prosperity for all of us.
Merci beaucoup, Mme Silvia CRESCIMBENI, point focal de la diplomatie climatique à Région MENA, directeur général du climat à l'Union européenne. On peut l'applaudir, effectivement, donc pour toutes ces informations, je vous remercie. J'ajouterai juste pour terminer le fameux projet ELMED également qui a été mis en place par l'Union européenne et la Tunisie. Ça aussi, c'est un corridor de transport, donc d'énergie verte très, très intéressant. Les travaux ont déjà commencé, le financement est là et on attend à ce que tout le travail se termine en 2028. Madame la ministre, si les dates sont bonnes, si ma mémoire est encore donc bonne. Merci beaucoup, Madame Silvia CRESCIMBENI. Thank you very much. Grazie molto per la sua intervenzione. Grazie. Arrivederci. Alors, on va passer actuellement donc à l'Espagne, à notre pays méditerranéen qui est en train de connaître effectivement une transition très intéressante. Et nous avons le plaisir d'avoir M. Miguel Rodrigo Gonzalo, qui est directeur du savoir du nouveau modèle de business et de la compétitivité à l'Instituto para la Diversificación y Ahorro de la Energía d'Espagne. Bienvenue parmi nous. Je ne sais pas si mon accent espagnol tient la route.
C'était parfait, c'était parfait.
Il dit que c'était parfait, c'est pas vrai. Alors, bienvenue parmi nous. Merci d'avoir fait le déplacement pour être l'un de nos panélistes. Et ma première question par rapport à l'Espagne, où se situe l'Espagne en termes d'ambition de décarbonation?
D'abord, je voudrais remercier l'organisation pour nous avoir invités aujourd'hui. Je vais m'excuser parce que je ne peux pas parler en français, je vais changer en anglais. I mean, in Spain, we build on the European legislation on the matter that has already been explained. We have tried in the last 5 years to build our own solid background legislation and a strategic framework to support decarbonization. We have a climate law that was approved in 2021. We have a long-term decarbonization strategy that sets the path to full decarbonization in 2050. And we have our cornerstone, which is the National Energy and Climate Plan that was released in 2020 and that today the Council of Ministers, that is chaired by the President of the Government, approved and updated of the national of this plan, which increases ambition. And I think this is very relevant. I think it's very relevant that these plannings, these energy plannings, are not approved by the ministries of energy or energy transition, but from the government. Because you would need on board the Ministry of Housing for energy renovation, you would need the Ministry of Mobility for low emission zones or electric mobility, and so on. So it's very important that the message comes from the top of the government. And it has already been mentioned that the countries, we part from different situations. We can share a common goal, but we have different situations. And the situation in Spain, and I would say in the European Union, is that we don't have a lot of competitive fossil fuels until now. I mean, until wind power and PV has become competitive, we could not have our own energy resources. So for us, it's very important to reduce also our dependence from the supply.
Mr. Gonzalo, excuse me for the interruption. S'il vous plaît, messieurs, s'il vous plaît, on est en train de vous parler également, c'est Omar. Mes salutations. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. So for us, this is another motivation, apart of course for fighting against climate change, to exploit these resources. And it's an historical opportunity. I mean, the prices of wind power and solar PV, for those countries as us and probably Tunisia that have a lot of natural resources, offer a very, very good opportunity to offer competitive prices to our industry and to our citizens. And I was struggling to find original ideas because the colleagues already mentioned a lot of things that I was going to say, and I would like to use the example of self-consumption. PV self-consumption, in the year 2019 in Spain, it was negligible. There was nothing. There was no self-consumption. And by putting the right regulatory framework, and we also put subsidies because we wanted things to happen fast, now only with these subsidies we have reached 3.5 gigawatts of self-consumption. And this is very relevant for different reasons. One of them is that you add new players in the energy sector, and the energy sector needs competition. That's very good for the energy sector. Then you add players like the citizens or SMEs that usually were passive agents. They become active agents. And I think this reduces the exposure also of companies to the volatility of electricity prices. So in global terms, we are aiming to reach 48% of renewable energy in the final energy consumption in 2030. Now we are in 22%, more or less. But for me, the most impressive figure is that we want to achieve 81% of renewable electricity generation in a country that has 500,000 square kilometers and 46 million inhabitants. I mean, we are not Denmark. And we are not interconnected with a lot of countries because we are not in the central part of Europe. We are on the south, we are connected with Portugal, which is great, and a bit with our French colleagues, but nothing more. So this implies huge challenges related also to the management of the grid, both at the transport and at the distribution level.
Alors, quelle est la place pour la collaboration internationale?
I think is key for us, and in cases like, for example, that has already mentioned several times, like a fair energy transition, a social inclusive transition. We are constantly sharing with colleagues from other countries our experience with this, because we have tried to implement, since we are phasing out coal power plants in Spain, this is a very sensitive issue from the social point of view, because these plants have been operating for 50 or 60 years. They are very much anchored to the territory. People are very much linked to these plants, and a lot of families depended on these plants. So when these plants close, we try to be creative, and we did competition for the access to the grid, because suddenly there were hundreds of megawatts free for other players, and instead of using price as the criteria to grant that access to the grid, we use social criteria. We ask how many employment are you going to create, how are you going to train people that now would be unemployed so they can find another employment, and we have granted access to the grid according to these social criteria.
Je remercie beaucoup M. Miguel Rodrigo Gonzalo. On l'applaudit s'il vous plaît pour donc son témoignage sur le cas. Je termine avec Dr Ethir Nuisr, qui est Programme Officer à l'Agence internationale pour les énergies renouvelables. L'IRENA joue un rôle clé. Bienvenue parmi nous d'abord.
Merci.
Vous êtes un compatriote tunisien, effectivement, et vous êtes à l'Agence internationale pour les énergies renouvelables. Ma question pour vous, l'IRENA joue un rôle clé dans la transition énergétique mondiale avec ses scénarios pour l'objectif de 1,5 degré Celsius. Comment son travail est-il à maintenir cet objectif à portée de main et est-il réaliste d'atteindre au vu du rythme actuel de déploiement des énergies renouvelables?
Merci Yanis. Je vais répondre en anglais. I want first to thank the organization committee for inviting us here and for setting up this panel. A lot of interesting topics, a lot of issues and challenges. Maybe we'll not solve them all, but at least we'll try and we'll find and we'll learn from each other. So, to come back to our mission at IRENA, it's as clear as urgent. It's indeed to keep the 1.5 target within reach. We need to triple the renewable energy capacity by 2030, and we need to double down the energy efficiency also by 2030. Indeed, our flagship report, that is the World Energy Transition Outlook, provides a comprehensive and economically viable pathway for reaching this target. It outlines indeed the required investment and technology that will help us to follow or to reach that target, and also the socio-economic impact of such an energy transition. So this being said, tripling the renewable energy capacity by 2030 is no easy task. And the current trend show that we may be falling behind, at least, let's say it like this, to reach this target. And this requires us to increase our renewable energy capacity globally by 16% annually towards 2030. So the situation actually in these past years actually became a little bit more complicated. With geopolitical disruption, with the global pandemic that strained our energy system. So, and this disruption are unfortunately more of ongoing reality in developing country that where we face, or where developing country face price volatility, supply shortages, and also are in such a setup of geopolitical dependency to other countries. So, at IRENA we have. Or you may ask me, the question is that what we can do to accelerate this energy transition, and how or what are the enablers that can be prioritized globally. And from this we identified 5 at IRENA, which the first one is the infrastructure and the system operation, and here mostly for electricity. And then the policy and the regulation, where the role of the government is key to ensure this, and to ensure enabling regulatory framework. Then we have the supply chain skills and capacity. Also, the 2 others are easing or providing access to finance, and then finally international collaboration that my colleagues also touched upon today.
Alors, vous avez montré 5, je dirais, éléments clés pour la transition énergétique. Pour des pays en voie de développement, je voudrais peut-être me focaliser sur la question de la bancabilité et du financement donc, de cette transition énergétique qui pose réellement problème. Donc pas uniquement, je dirais, le financement, mais l'accès à des chaînes de valeur qui est de plus en plus donc, difficile. Comment ce travail pourrait être combiné, le travail que vous êtes en train de faire finalement, pourrait être combiné avec des défis que je viens de citer?
Thanks for this question. Indeed, our work, to put it a bit on the context of Africa, we develop different energy transition scenarios. Each of them will have a different economic development projection, and then also different decarbonization targets. So this will allow the countries that will be scenarios in our project to have an estimation of what I have said, as I said, the investment necessary for each of the scenarios. So at the end, they will have like more, the policymaker will have insights on how, on which area they need to prioritize, on which for investment, and then what are especially the socio-economic impacts of this investment on the economy or on the GDP, also on the employment, and then on the human welfare. So this is, for the case of Africa and North Africa, is an ongoing work, and we started this 1.5 years ago, and we will be like informing about the results maybe within 1 year, hopefully. And yeah, finally on the access to finance, indeed in this case there would be a need for more international collaboration, maybe like international finance institution and multilateral development bank, and then also global fund such as the Green Climate Fund could help us here to, or could help developing country into financing their energy transition, especially as it was said before, as cost of capital is indeed a big issue in developing economy, where it could reach 2 or 3 times the level of developed countries and China also.
On peut applaudir M. Dr Efir Nuisr, s'il vous plaît, qui est programme officer à l'Agence internationale pour les énergies renouvelables. Alors, on va ouvrir la Q&A session. Je vais prendre une question par rangée, une question par là, une question par là, une question par là, une question par là. Excusez-moi si je vais être un peu rigoureux sur le temps nous devance et j'ai besoin de questions claires, nettes et précises. Je commencerai avec cette rangée, le premier ou la première qui lève la main. Je passe à la deuxième rangée. Alors, pas de questions par ici. Questions par là? Tout a été clair, paraît-il. Question par-ci? Voilà, monsieur qui est là. Vous présentez et vous posez votre question, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Thank you. I'll be asking my question in English, and it's to whoever wants to answer it. My name is Idris Garziz. I'm with Youngo. And my question is, on a regional and national scale, what are the checks and balances being put in place to assure that this decarbonization transition happens in a just and correct way, to assure the rights of the indigenous communities, a word that I have not heard in this conference to this moment, the rights of the global south to the development and growth, and not replicating the neo-colonialist practices and aspect that has long existed in the energy sector and the export-oriented industries? And how is the chain of value created by the green hydrogen projects any different or better than the dysfunctional and socially non-equitable petroleum industries? How can we talk about decarbonizing and energy transition without even enforcing the transfer of energy and technology within the Sharm el-Sheikh Framework Agreement, or the mandated fund through the Loss and Damages Fund, or the Adaptation Fund, or the Medication Fund?
Thank you. Thank you. Je vais prendre une autre question de la rangée qui est à ma gauche. Pas de questions. Excusez-moi, je ne suis pas en train de voir à cause de la lumière. Hein. Si vous pouvez baisser la lumière. Monsieur, voilà, monsieur qui est là, oui. Bienvenue.
Merci pour cette présentation très intéressante. Moi, je pose la question sur la question, en fait, de collaboration, puisque c'est un problème global qui touche toute l'humanité. On met le secteur privé qui a plus le sens de la compétitivité et de la compétition en termes de balance avec un besoin de collaboration accrue. Donc, est-ce qu'il y a une création de solutions au niveau de collaboration internationale pour balancer cette compétition et collaboration? Merci.
Merci à vous. Who wants to answer these two questions? Mr. Sidawi?
I can start and colleague will complement. Actually, in the first question, maybe just to take the points on course, I think for the just inclusive energy transition, just maybe because your question was combined with several, basically, I think we did mention that the decarbonization pathway should take into consideration how it should be just and inclusive. But technically speaking, that you need to have the enablers, and colleagues already did mention you have the policy aspect, but you need to have the finance that goes with it. But the third pillar is the collaboration, and the collaboration starts with having the finance. But the enablers, the more important in the just inclusive energy transition is to build the capacity, both at the government and institutional level, and ensure as well that the human capital that we have, we address the skills gap, we enable them to drive the energy transition. And to change the business model in terms of having much more financing. When you have the financing, then everything should go properly. And you maybe just did indicate Global South. I think more maybe we remain within the Mediterranean region, and since this is the purpose of this discussion, you know, to go not beyond of that. But I think this is the purpose, to have countries in the Mediterranean, be it from this side or the other side, to collaborate further and have more financing coming to this region, including the host country, in order to enable a just inclusive energy transition and build on our natural resources as we have them, be it human or natural in the ground, and the solar that we have it from the Creator. This may be because I'm a regional commission, I will take from the
private sector?
Regional collaboration.
Okay.
The two aspects you have them, I think this platform is, my understanding is also to lead the collaboration in the Mediterranean. And then number two, you have also other initiatives that come up, like the method, which was also led by the EU, but mostly by the German government, and it's also with the MENA region, intended to boost on the green corridors, specifically on hydrogen, but more on the infrastructure investment. But others, it's also the League of Arab States to push more on the electricity regional collaboration, because in the region, with the energy transition, in order to ensure that we all move in the same, at least to take the same train, but maybe in the same, not the same level, we need to ensure that the electricity, regional collaboration, electricity, be it with the European countries, but also in the African continent and within us and Arab countries, it needs to be there in the same horizon that the targets that we put in renewable energy, in order to really ensure that we boost our energy access, but more importantly, that the infrastructure developed at the national level support sub-regional and regional collaboration. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalo, you would like to intervene also?
Just a very quick answer on the first question. We are trying, as I mentioned before, to foster new players in the energy market, and we are trying to foster the concept of energy community also in Spain. And we have tried to support around 80 energy communities that might not seem much, but before there were 0. So these are associations of people that are not in the energy sector, but that join together in order to develop a project for not an economic purpose, but for a social benefit in the place where they live.
Merci, merci à vous tous. S'il vous plaît, je vous demande d'applaudir nos chers panélistes, Monsieur Andrea CAMPONOGARA, Madame Rabia Sidewi. Vos applaudissements pour Madame Rabia Sidewi. Voilà. Madame Silvia CRESCIMBENI qui était avec nous de Bruxelles. Monsieur Miguel Rodrigo Gonzalo, qui est venu spécialement d'Espagne pour vous, et Dr Ethir Nuisser également, sans oublier les 2 interventions en ligne qui étaient à l'actif de Mme Nigar ARPADERAI et de Monsieur Rachid Ali Abdallah.